Good evening. It's Joyful Christian Hermit, and I have mentioned these two writings. They could be like little sermons. One is by Saint Ambrose, the Bishop of Milan, I think he was from the 4th century, yeah. Lived to be, I think he was born 340 to 397 and lived 57 years. But he was a tremendous bishop, and he's the one that baptized and then ordained or helped St. Augustine in his conversion. Well, so Augustine was reared as Christian by his mother, St. Monica, but he fell away, totally left God. And one of his books that is it's outstanding and gives the depth of his conversion and a lot of his thoughts regarding that period of time, called Confessions, the Confessions of St. Augustine. So, but it's Ambrose, St. Ambrose, who wrote this one as very appropriate for Advent, and it's a more serious, pondering kind of a view of setting our tone spiritually in this season, this time of coming to celebrate the birth of Christ, the Nativity, and then also the reflection and the striving in our own spiritual lives of our soul's disposition before God, and in what condition is our soul. Because Advent was also, and first of all, was considered waiting for the second coming of Christ, which in the earlier centuries was a more urgent thought, a more urgent consideration. Christ hadn't left the world only 3-4 centuries prior. So that was their more of a focus. And then later, St. Peter Christologus and really sort of led the group that had this theology of Advent being the Nativity, celebrating the Nativity. I did not realize this, but this spiritual friend that texts at night gives a little update of her day and a scripture that we've chosen from the daily Mass readings as our little interchange of email in the evening. She pointed out that the first 2 weeks of Advent, from her upbringing, were to be focused on the Parousia, or the second coming, and the last 2 weeks celebrating the preparation for the coming of the Nativity, for celebrating the Nativity, the coming of Christ as an infant. So, but then I had read that it had been brought together. So there's no set rule on that. I think the one of the first 2 weeks and the last 2 weeks of Advent since the 6th or 7th century, because before then Advent was 6 weeks long approximately, from the 11th of November, St. Martin of Tours feast day, until Christmas Day. So things change. These are traditions mostly, and then there were some canon laws associated with Advent, and still are, and others have been more dropped or forgotten, such as the fasting every day, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and the having to be in church every single day, make a visit to your church from the 17th of December for 21 days. So that would go past Christmas. That was back in the 4th century, a canon law decided. So it's not known now. That's not a practice now of having to do that, of all the faithful and the clergy. So things change as times change, and these are obviously human created aspects. And in fact, Advent is also the celebrations and the making that a liturgical season in the church, but it's rather an inspired one. It's a lovely one. There's a unity and an order to our spiritual church year that is helpful in some ways that I've been mentioning, and if you know of many more ways. So here is another way that Ambrose is suggesting. You have heard the voice of the Word of God. As you rise, prepare the inner mind for prayer, that you may hasten from things below to the things on high. See how to open the doors of your heart. As you stretch out your hands to Christ, their deeds will exhale the odor of fidelity. That is as Christ has desired you and chosen you. He's chosen us, to go inward into our hearts and our inner minds so that our prayers will rise out of that, and our actions of love and of selfless giving will also. So Christ enters at the open door. He will not fail to do so, for he has promised to enter. Embrace him whom you have sought. Approach him and be illumined. Hold him and beg him not to go away quickly. Beg him not to depart. For the word of God runs and will not be held by the slothful nor negligent soul. Let your soul run to his call and follow closely the sound of Christ's heavenly voice, for his passing is swift. Because Christ has gone past so quickly, do not think you are displeasing to him, for you have called him, asked him, opened to him. He allows us to be tested. When the crowds asked him not to depart, did he not say, I must preach the gospel of God's kingdom to other cities too? It is for this that I was sent. That's from Luke 4:43. Even if Christ does not seem to have left you, go out, look for him again. That's from Song of Songs 5, verse 6. She who thus seeks and entreats Christ is never abandoned, but visited by him frequently, for he stays until the consummation of the world. That reference is from Matthew 28, verse 30. So this wasn't specifically written for Advent, but it's very good for Advent. It's what we need to be doing, is seeking the Lord all the more. This is the beginning of our new church year, and I consider it a spiritual year, a year of the spiritual calendar of my life. It's the one that I go by more than the calendar year. In essence, within me, my rhythm of my life is more geared to this, and it may be with yours, even more so than mine. And I would love it, if you have things that you do to enhance the spiritual year, and we're now in this season of Advent, or things that you notice in the temporal world. I was noticing the frost on some of the perennials. Some of the stems were green, but up at the top, all this frost on them, and down, partway down, and on some of the conifers that change from gold to more of a brownish color in the winter. The frost on those, it's just I'm like in another creation of God now. This season, even outwardly, is shifting, and I lend to that. I have here this is my Advent and Lent pottery, purple. So, all these reminders, I especially now that I'm older and my mind is focused, easily to focus. These outer reminders, external reminders, help me remember the interior And so I also was reminded by the Lord today. Well, actually, it was yesterday, late yesterday, after I'd done my videos. And I was reminded how impatient I am. And I said aloud right at the door, patio door, I was taking the dogs out. And I had this flash from my dad. And I said, I'm the most impatient of my family, even. I lack patience. Because the Lord was reminding me that it's in His time and His way that He will work with people. I had become very concerned for my friend because I had heard her voice, the one that's very ill, and how it sounded. And I knew that she's in this phase of dealing with her illness. And she did not call me back, which is fine. I sort of wasn't expecting it. She doesn't want to talk, I don't think. And she's tired too. Fatigue. She's not used to it like I am. She's not used to the suffering. And she's having suffering, and she's had to go on some medicine, I'm sure. They gave her some in the hospital to get the terrible intractable pain under control. And her nausea. I have nausea medicine I've had to take. And it can tend to make you tired until you adapt to all these things. So even pain medicine, until you adapt. And depends on what kind. But it's the pain that makes you tired. So I understand all that, but I did hear from her later that she has a baby granddaughter now. Came 2 weeks early. I was praying so last night that little girl would be born before midnight because it would have shared my friend's birthday, which was yesterday. But it came at 5:39 this morning Eastern time. This little baby girl and a much desired grandchild of one of her sons and wife, who have been trying for a long time. They have 2 older boys. Now they have this little girl who's going to be delightfully spoiled in a wonderful way, very much loved. So that was good news, and I realized she texted me to pray for her daughter-in-law and for their whole family because they were at the hospital. The father, the wife, and the 2 sons. They're in I think maybe early high school or junior high, definitely. But the younger one maybe junior high, and the other one maybe early high school. And they're all, excited about this baby, so they were all at the hospital waiting and help, keeping the mother company in labor and things. But all very exciting. And I realized my friend wants to stay in what's happening now and isn't ready to deal with the spiritual aspects of what's next. And also, she still could have a miracle healing. They've been praying, and I have too for her. They've asked, to ask the intercessions of Blessed Solanus Casey. And so I have been. Of course, God knows it's always His will that we want. His will, because He knows best. But I ask for that favor for her. She wants to stay in this temporal world. And maybe later on, although it seems like it's progressing quickly, but she's had a turnaround in the hospital and is back at home. So that's good news. But it was the voice, though, that the sound of the voice, wasn't her typical. And I could tell there's sadness and there's, not wanting this. So not wanting the illness, this terminal illness. So, and I wasn't told about a prognosis, which is not good at all. But actually somebody else called me from that town to tell me what they had heard. Didn't know that I knew that she was ill even. So there's a lot that goes on. And I realized the Lord was telling me. Then that's how I responded. My dad also, I could remember he used to say, "Hold your horses," and things like, "Don't wear your feelings on your sleeve," and or you show your feelings on your face too much. Learn to mask that, and slow down, slow down. And I was the most impatient in our family. I was very action oriented and shaker and mover. And I've made lots of mistakes in life as a result of all types of mistakes. And this was one yesterday of, God had to remind me. He'll get her ready. He'll get her ready if when the time comes and when she's ready. And he'll get her ready on the other side. He'll do that for us. God is so patient with us. I didn't emphasize that. I didn't even think of it really. I was more focused on, let's do what we can now in this life. Let's get with it, to us. I was talking to our little cyber community, but I used Dad as an example and another person as an example. But if we're not wanting to yet, we don't have to. God gives us, we progress on the other side. And he'll get her ready if he's not going to provide a major miracle of her health miraculously changing or slowing this down so that she has several years more. We never know. God can do anything he wants and wills. And she is so holy. That's what stunned me, though, is she is so holy and devout and all, and just, a beautiful soul and virtuous and all these things. And I think I just expected that she would be right there, even excited, maybe looking forward once it settled in. What she found out, even where it was located and things. So, but no, she's not ready. She doesn't want to have to talk or think about those things, and I probably remind her because I look forward to it. I'm in a different spot, but I had different experiences than she's had. That death experience was life altering. Excuse me. So it's what I had to be reminded of in Lent is cool it, chill out, let people go and do in their own timing, their own way they want, knowing that God will deal with it. Obviously, God will get her ready when the time comes, and if not, she doesn't have to. He'll continue on progressing us after we pass. I didn't know I was going to die at all. I'd had a premonition with my death experience. I had a flash of inner sight, which I didn't even know what it was then, that I was going to die or that something would happen. Even what if I would die was posed to me within 3 days prior to my surgery. And I had died right after surgery in recovery. After this other nurse had left to sign out, she did come back, and so I had one nurse for a while, and then another one came. Then they got the doctor from the ER and called the surgeon, and he had to drive back to the hospital a ways. So I died for some time period, but I had this flash 3 days prior, to the point where I wrote out instructions of, what I wanted, who someone to give the sermon. And I didn't have a will, but I wrote out, who I wanted to have part of the children, my at least some visitation, my parents, to at least have visitation with the children, because obviously their dad would have them. So I was writing out instructions. And after the surgery, when I was finally able to get up and walk around, I found that paper and got rid of it. I didn't want the children to see it by accident, because I'd left it in a spot that would be prominent. My children had already been sent back to stay with my parents at their lake place for my surgery time. So I had that premonition, but I didn't dwell on it whatsoever. It was just like a flash. I thought, well, I better put something down here just in case. But sure enough, it happened. And I was already dead before I realized I was dead. I was going at the speed of whatever, toward the center of the universe, in essence, or something. It seemed like that. And it was so glorious where I was that I didn't have any worries or concerns to deal with, or resentments, or I loved it. It was great. It was glorious. I mean, who wouldn't? It was, and I wasn't in any kind of a pure state whatsoever. Later I wondered about that, as I mentioned in the video. I thought I would, wouldn't be in heaven or be in good, in all that love and joy. Thought I would at least be in some hot spots, or having a good strong talking to, and et cetera, but no. So I have this different perspective, so it's a little different. I have to remember that and be patient. Work on my Advent, but it did all give me a great idea. I would like to write a little book or something. I don't want to say too much about the content, but yes, I'm going to outline it out and maybe see what Dr. H thinks about it too. Think it would be good. If maybe a lot of people wouldn't want it, if they don't want to face these things until it happens. Some people are just like that. I'll deal with it when it happens. And that's their prerogative. From my perspective, from what I've experienced, and of insights and things, and from what saints have said, like Catherine of Genoa and her ecstasies and what God shared with her, the more we can do in this life, the better, to ready ourselves, to ready our souls for pure love, to learn pure love. So here's another, we just heard the more serious view of approaching Christ, seeking him, calling out to him, knowing that he comes to us, but quickly, he doesn't stay. And that's true even when I wanted the marriage to be consummated. He said, no, I have to go on to other souls, but I will be back for you. I will be back, and we will consummate the marriage then. But told me to wait, to be strong, to wait, and then he repeated, be strong. And it's been 12 years of earth time that I've waited for him. But he's out busy with other souls. We have to understand that, He has others, not just us. So that's what this bishop of Milan, Ambrose, was alluding to, that Christ doesn't just stay and stay and stay. It'll seem like he's fleeting, but he has others, other work that he's doing on behalf of souls. And He can be with all of us at once, though, of course. He's universal. God can do anything. But as far as our own recognition and feeling him, we're not going to feel him present all the time. We have to go with faith and have our love in him, and he promises us his love will be in us. So he is in us. But as far as the interactive, even if you have a locution with Christ or a vision with Christ, it doesn't go on for the rest of your life. Seeing him in corporeal form or talking back and forth overtly with him. But interiorly, yes, it can if we come to that point of love. But we need to be living in this world. So we have to learn to know that Christ is in us and God's communicating with us. Sometimes through the temporal, through people in the temporal. Late yesterday, it was a thought flash from my dad, who was reminding me of my impatience. And then I thought of what he said to me, how he would say, hold your horses. And I said aloud, Dad, you're right, and I was the most and am the most impatient of our family, which is a truth. And because God had been showing me this impatience and this wanting my friend to be there already. Well, she isn't ready. So, back off, bulldog here. So anyway, spiritual bull. I do get very intense and zealous. That's a flaw of mine in the wrong situation, see. So God will handle it. I kept saying, God will handle it. I've got my Advent, my coming to deal with, my coming to God to deal with, which could happen any moment. I could be taken out. So transcend or transfer, transition, metamorphose. So here's another take on Advent. And this wasn't specifically written for Advent either, but it's so good. These were meditations written by St. Charles de Foucald, whose feast day was December 1. In my video, I thought it was the 3rd or the 8th, but it's December 1st. St. Charles de Foucald. And he died, remember, in 1916. I did a video on him recently. He was shot, killed, execution style. Or it was by accident, but in the head. They had taken him out, and a young person with the marauders, the ones that had broken in and thought he had guns, or different rumors, and but something startled them, and the young one pulled the trigger and shot him in the head, shot Charles in the head. And they did finally find him in 1944. This young person found him, what would that be, 28 years later. The French did, and killed him, executed him for his crime of killing Charles de Foucald. So this one, though, he writes out about how Christ invites us to joy. This is a celebratory time, Advent is. A ponderous, thoughtful time, self-reflective, seeking Christ seriously, having him in us, recognizing that, and us in him, as St. Ambrose says. And now here's St. Foucald, St. Charles. My God, how good you are to invite us to joy. And not only to invite us, but to be present, so strong, so powerful, the patterns that it forces us to be joyful to the same degree as we love you. He brings joy and love together. And that's his thoughts. These are just his thoughts, and the others were Ambrose's thoughts. The reason for the joy you offer is your own blessedness. He's talking to Jesus. His meditations are always writing things to Jesus in his own words. The more we love you, the more we ardently desire your good. The more we put our joy in you rather than ourselves, the more we will enjoy your happiness. In heaven, your happiness is the main joy of the elect. This celestial happiness, it depends on us to enjoy it from this life largely. If we love you enough to get out of ourselves and put all our joy in you. If we put all our joy in you, we will be happy from the moment we do on this very earth. If we do not put all our joy in you, we would not be fully happy even in heaven. How good are you, my God, to call us in this world to such happiness, to such a high perfection, to such a narrow place with you, and to push us with such ardent words. How good you are. Rejoice into the Lord, all the earth. Burst into jubilant song with music, bless. That's Psalm 98. So that's another aspect for Advent that we can take to heart. And it has aspects in here of the patterns that Jesus presents to us that are so powerful that it forces us to be as joyful in the same degree that we love him. So we can consider that kind of a joyous love. But I'll add here, this would be in something that I would write of joy and love, that if we're suffering, the suffering can be to the same degree as we love him, because love and suffering are intertwined. And then that brings in this attitude of bringing joy into our suffering, using our minds and the Holy Spirit that can do all things through God in us. We can get to the point, even if it's just a thought, and we're not really feeling it with our hearts yet, but we can move in this direction of putting our suffering with joy in love, to the same degree of love of God. And what a difference that makes. And the saints came to that, where they would, die exultant, suffer with a smile even. That can be very difficult, and it's not necessary. God doesn't expect us to be, smiling through pain. That can be a little bit warped. You have to be sort of careful with that. Some doctors might bring in a psychologist and say that we've become a little bit off kilter there, and delighting in suffering. But it's a joy. It's a joy and a love and a suffering that can go together and move us forward in joy of Christ and love with our suffering. So it's a matter of praying and asking God what he wants for our Advent. What does he want us to learn and practice and become? Adventists, come. Come, Maranatha, come. There's also the hymn, O come, Emmanuel. There's hymns that go along with Advent. So there's a lot to Advent. It's exciting. The start of the new liturgical year, and of practicing it, living it, celebrating it, praying Advent, and of experiencing it in a different way, a very spiritual way, a very serious way of prayerfully, mentally and emotionally considering our progression, our coming to God in Lent, coming to Christ, but it's also a bringing in of joy. So we have these examples of these two saints with their different take, their different thoughts, and we can apply it to Advent. So it's, I think it's very exciting. It's an adventure. Advent is this new season of the year, the church year, and we can pay attention and notice what's going on. I even thought about my friend and how first time she's texted me was with the exciting news of this baby coming early. Texted me last night, please pray. And then let me know this morning that the baby was born. So it's a matter of that's where my friend wants to focus on that, on what's going on now and her family, and I realized how lovely that is. And my Advent's different. My Advent is wanting to become Christ, come to Christ, not become that I'm going to become God, but to become one with Him, have it consummated as much as I can offer spiritually in this temporal world. And then joy. I'm loving this aspect of joy coming into this season. And then I'm noticing, I think I'm going to try tomorrow if I can, or pretty soon here, is to go outside with my camera and do a little video of the beautiful shift in scenery, how it has shifted. You won't know it, but just in the last 2 to 3 days with this heavy frost, and everything is just wondrous out there. A touch of what's to come, heaven, another beauty, but also it's not going to stay that way. We're going to get warmer weather. We'll get snow even. It won't look the same as it is right now. Advent will change, but we have change in our spiritual lives. And that's another thing to consider with liturgical seasons. We grow, we keep growing. And God will help us in whatever ways we need. So that was just what I wanted to talk about in this video and share these two writings that would be the equivalent to little sermons, little homilies that each of these priests, clergy, wrote. And it would be, 1,500 years apart. So just the different attitude, the different progression of thought. So we have the more serious, spiritually thoughtful, and we have the joyous, also spiritually thoughtful. So we can, we have options and choices and opportunities. Advent opportunity. God bless His real presence in us. And blessed Advent. We are coming toward Christ from many directions, on many levels of understanding and desire, but always seeking God's will and seeking Christ in our seeking, our becoming in Adventists.